help us welcome Mr. Douglas K. Gordon. Good morning, Mr. Gordon. How you doing?
Good morning.
He is the CEO of Silo Wellness Inc., a multinational company on a mission to support and aid in the reduction of trauma and increase of performance through psychedelics and time-tested natural medicine. He's also the founder of Canex Jamaica, the premier cannabis business conference and expo in the Caribbean, with over 2,500 attendees from 37 countries. That's big. That's big. All right. Also, we're talking to Douglas is going to be talking to us about a major collaboration he had recently with the Marleys to launch Marley One. Okay, the first functional mushroom brand backed by a major celebrity brand. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, help us welcome Ingrid Riley. Morning, Ingrid.
Hey, Ingrid.
Ingrid is a well-known and sought-after tech expert and award-winning blogger. She's the founder of Rebel Girl Media, and she is the publisher of the Sensi and Sensi blog. She joins the discussion to talk about the intersection between psychedelics, weed, and tech. And Ingrid was also a part of a conversation recently about women in psychedelics and cannabis. So we're going to talk to her about that as well. And rounding out our panel is Dr. Ché Bowen. He's the president, CEO, and CMO of The MDLink, the #1 telemedicine platform in the Caribbean. And their mission is to improve and reinvent access to healthcare. They're an innovative online medical platform that connects patients to the best doctors and medical service providers in the region, anytime, anywhere. And Dr. Bowen, I've used MDLink and it's awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
And he's talking to us about the rise of telehealth in the Caribbean and how his company is leading the charge. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Digital Jamaica live show. I'm happy to have you guys here. So we're going to start out with Douglas talking about functional mushrooms.
Yes.
Because what is even that?
Yes. Give us a little background there.
Well, you have mushrooms. Well, thank you for having me on today. You have three types of mushrooms. You have culinary, which we're all familiar with in terms of portobello and different types that we eat. We have functional or therapeutic, and then we have psychedelic, better known as psilocybin. And functional mushrooms essentially have a lot of health properties. They've been around for a very long time. So you have folks who are, who are very familiar with health and wellness, and they would tend to know functional mushrooms. They would know them by names, sort of the species names. So lion's mane, reishi, turkey's tail, cordyceps, etc.
Yeah.
And, they've been proven out over time to have positive health benefits. So, for example, lion's mane is good for mind, for focus, for energy. Reishi is good for sleep. And so what we've done is, added those through our R&D perspective to say, let's add other active ingredients that will amplify the impact of the particular species, so that we can give the user a much more enhanced health and wellness experience. So, we've taken something that's been around for a very long time in functional mushrooms that have gained a lot of attention lately. Very fast growing space. In 2020, it was a $46 billion industry, and it's projected to grow at about 10% per year for the next 8 years. So it's a pretty large and fast growing industry. What we've done is sort of, introduce some product innovations to best open them up for people who might be familiar with echinacea, but they've not tried functional mushrooms. So we put them together so that they have a better, a better
understanding.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, and why do you think, Douglas, that it's growing in popularity? Because while I was doing research for this segment, I'm seeing a lot of statements from celebrities and people going, "Yeah, I use functional mushroom. It's no problem. It enhances my productivity or my creativity." So that's the kind of the conversation around it. And I think I found an article about persons in Silicon Valley using functional mushrooms as a part of their whole process. So why do you think it's taking off in popularity? And what is the state of that in the region or in Jamaica? Do you think it's as popular or it's gaining in popularity here?
So I think in large measure, you know, we've had this massive shift toward having more natural solutions for health and wellness. You know, that's taken place, you know, that's an exponentially growing trend over the last sort of 15, 20, 25 years. And so it's just becoming more and more a substitute for folks in terms of looking for ways to be healthier, to improve their own bodies. And, you know, you're just finding new compounds, or not new compounds, we're rediscovering things that we were not familiar with in the past that can serve us in that particular mission. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's what mushrooms are. The other thing to put into context is, with all the work that's been done to better understand the impacts of psychedelics, you know, mushrooms as a topic has become much more prevalent. And people have been doing a lot of research and now unlocking and understanding the huge potential that psychedelics hold for mental health, both in terms of performance, in the sense of accessing more of our capacity as human beings and being more centered and productive, because we have found ways to better manage the traumas that we've all endured in the past, as well as treating, you know, very specific conditions, so anxiety, depression, and so forth, PTSD, for example. So the whole conversation around mushrooms continues to amplify. And as a byproduct of that, you know, what people will see with functional mushrooms is, while it's on its own continuum in terms of just this broader appreciation for natural solutions and natural ways to improve our bodies, you know, these have been around for a very long time, and that's why you're now seeing it become, quote unquote, more trendy. But it's really just more people understanding how they work and how they can help us.
Yeah. Yes, so I think that that's specifically around us here locally, us gaining an appreciation and understanding of even what these the mushrooms and how they're used, etc. Ingrid, I'd love for you to weigh in here with regards to the role that you think that technology plays in the conversation around whether it is psychedelics or marijuana, and what comes to mind is like the popularity of things like 420. How do you think that tech integrates within this conversation?
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely.
You know, it's good to be the lone rose among the thorns, but the thorns are and I have massive respect for, and I've been keeping an eye on online.
Yeah. Ingrid, I can hardly hear you, and I'm dying to hear you.
Okay, are you hearing me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, all right. I think my mic is kind of doing some weird things. Okay, great. So yeah, so happy to be between the lone rose between the two thorns that I've been admiring. So I'm very happy to be here. So regarding the role in tech, now we know that with weed, marijuana, cannabis, whatever it is that you want to call it these days, and also mushrooms, operate within a very regulated and also very opaque environment. Regulated in terms of legal, both in various markets, and opaque because people are still understanding the medicinal benefits of it all. And so what I think the role that digital and tech plays is helping to educate a lot more, help to have the people who are actually selling these products know about these products and services, to use these digital platforms to educate and inspire and to connect people to the right information from the right people at the right time. Because
Ingrid, you're sharing, you're dropping some facts and some gems, but our community is not really hearing you. Yeah.
Are you here?
Speak again, please.
Are you hearing me better?
Ingrid, try without the headphones and see if that is better, because it's really low. Or you can turn it up. Your phone needs to turn up or something, volume.
Are you hearing me better?
Yes,
better.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
or these headphones, you know, these.
Done its time. Yes, so we're talking about the intersection of tech and the role that it's playing to further the conversation around psychedelics and marijuana.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that the role of tech is that it is there as a platform for people who are providing products and services to leverage these platforms to educate people and to connect them to the right information, the right people at the right time. And so because, again, we have, you know, these particular products, which are great right now because, you know, health and wellness is a multi-billion-dollar business and only growing further because of the pandemic, you know, exacerbating a whole bunch of different things regarding our mental health particularly. So I think because providers of these mushroom products or these cannabis products can't, within a lot of markets, advertise like, say, alcohol or like, say, food can, they have to basically get into the tech space, into the digital space to educate and to inform individuals. So it plays a crucial role in terms of not just educating, but also marketing, and also you know, tech can also play a role in terms of managing how these companies are actually doing their business, from research to production as well. So tech is really a very integral part of these industries. In fact, it's a critical part of any industries if you're operating in this digital age.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So in other words, then Ingrid, it's about really the access to information that we now have. So, for instance, Silo Wellness can now, you know, put out their own research on these digital platforms. They can have conversations around these natural medicines or alternative medicines, right? And that can inform the public about what this thing is for and maybe encourage use of these products. And it's also going into, you said, you know, how the production of the products, because I know that with Douglas, your launch was digital. It was a digital launch. Marley One, I think it was. So you have an e-commerce platform set up around the distribution of Marley One.
Yes, but I mean, it was a digital launch in the sense that we had to host things like, you know, a virtual press conference. So we have the media around a Zoom platform, you know, asking their questions and so forth. But, you know, we're not operating only in the digital space. And we have an e-commerce solution, but we also have sales into brick and mortar outlets in terms of different channels around the world. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. And by the way, Ingrid, it's a real pleasure to be here with you. I'm very honored to share the stage. And of course, Ché, good to see you again.
Yeah, and we're going to go to Dr. Bowen because he is the MD here, right?
Yes.
Dr. Bowen, in terms of, you know, weed and psychedelics, traditionally, I can speak to weed more than I can speak to psychedelics because I'm really just learning about that. But traditionally, growing up, you know, we have particular, you know, what you call it, groups of persons, Rastafarians, that's a part of their tradition or whatever, except for a long time, that was kind of vilified here. So we grew up hearing that weed is not necessarily good. I didn't know of weed as an alternative medicine for like things like treating anxiety, etc. No, you're hearing
crazy.
Cannabis, oil and stuff. So there was always a negative connotation around weed. But from a medical perspective, how useful is psychedelics and weed to actually treating things, especially when it comes to mental health issues like anxiety, depression, etc.?
Okay, excellent. Thanks for having me. First of all, again, I'm Dr. Bowen, CEO and founder of MDLink. And to answer your question, I'd want to answer it from both sides, both the tech side and the health side.
Sure.
From the tech side, it's interesting to see how the progress of these medications, cannabis and psychedelics, how they have entered the market. They entered at the same time that the digital era was in place. And from a medical perspective, these entities were forced immediately to get digital. And what I noticed is that to regulate their stock, they had digital inventory management already in place. And I was approached. MDLink as a company was approached, of course, because the next thing they needed was healthcare, but they didn't want to have doctors on site. So, and then there were some geographical borders that they needed to cross, and they reached out to me for telemedicine. So from both a cannabis perspective, we actually ended up partnering, and one of our first partnerships, which a lot of people don't know, was with Kaya, the herb house. So we do medical recommendations for anyone who visits Kaya, and we are approved by the CLA to do so. And so how that works is that when you visit the entity, you have to see a doctor online digitally. They then get a digital recommendation. The inventory is reported digitally. I think the only issue is the digital payments and the digital finance aspect of things.
Yeah.
That's
because of that's because of the regulatory framework, as well as the relationship with other international bodies, because they're policing our use of it. But in certain states, they have access.
So Dr. Bowen, how about from the psychedelic side? Because that's from the weed side, and we actually didn't know that MDLink was a part of that whole Kaya setup. But in terms of psychedelics, yeah.
From the health side, again, yes, cannabis and psychedelics have been found to treat a lot of these mental health conditions, and with the pandemic, we have seen a definite rise in the need for mental health services. Mostly in the first world, but it's definitely going to come to the other parts of developing countries, and more people will realize that mental health, life has reached a point where you have access to this mental health, and it can help you live a better, more wholesome life. So why not get the services and healthcare treatment that you need?
Yeah, absolutely.
So both cannabis and psychedelics, even the CBD aspect of cannabis, the THC aspect of cannabis, have been found to treat conditions like anxiety, especially anxiety, PTSD, depression even. And from the psychedelic aspect, what they speak about is that what we see happening is that the psychedelics, it recreates the pathways in your brain. So someone who's anxious or depressed or has traumatic stress disorder, their brain pathways, they keep going through the negativity. There's only one pathway to go: negative, because the positive side of things, the positive pathways, they have diminished. And then when what trials have shown is that when you use psychedelics in the acute phase, you can reconfigure the wiring of the brain, or the pathways, the synapses, and you reopen them, and then the brain has other pathways to go down, which means they can reform new pathways and live a more mentally satisfying life. That's what has been shown. And another thing of importance is that Mind Bloom, which is one of the biggest telemedicine psychedelic platforms in the world, they have been pushing the psychedelic healthcare to break down the geographical borders as well as the economic barriers. And that would include stuff like ketamine. Another interesting point is that psychedelics, although it's not legal in a lot of places, but Jamaica is one of those places, and Douglas can let us know the other places. I just know that Jamaica definitely is one of those places, one of the few places in the world where it is legal. And that being said, there's an opportunity there.
Yes.
Even from a medical tourism standpoint.
Yes, definitely. And I'm glad you said that.
You
Dr.
did that,
Bowen.
Yes,
because I remember when Gwyneth Paltrow, I think it was Gwyneth Paltrow, famous Hollywood actress, she came here and she did some kind of retreat or something, and psychedelics was involved, and it was global news, big thing. Gwyneth Paltrow get crazy in Jamaica with psychedelics, right? And that was, I think, the first time I actually heard about it. And then, people tend to think that Gwyneth is kind of You know, so that was, it was fitting. She was on brand, is what I'm saying. But now we're seeing that, okay,
The
Jamaica
conversation.
being, definitely the conversation is advancing, because Jamaica being one of few countries where it is still legal, as you said, Dr. Bowen, is an opportunity. So Douglas, how do we shape Jamaica into a global destination or community for psychedelics? And I'll ask Ingrid the same question about weed. You know, how do we build a culture in Jamaica and the Caribbean around psychedelics? Dr. Bowen talked about, you know, health tourism. How do we get that going?
Well, there's a couple of things. You know, Jamaica is the only jurisdiction where psychedelics are not illegal. At present, you know, in the Netherlands, truffles are legal, but not mushrooms, not psilocybin mushrooms. But I think it's important, if I may, to just in terms of how we look at psychedelics, you know, there's a trippy part, there's a recreational component to it, right? And to sort of not speak to that is to be a little bit disingenuous in the industry, and we have to be mindful of it. But what we at Silo Wellness focus on, and why this is has been taking off around the world in terms of the importance of the research, is that you have about 30% of people who are in treatment for depression and other mental health ailments, for whom it's you know, the medical community has accepted it doesn't work at all. You know, they're what they like to call treatment resistant. And that's just to say the medication is having no positive impact for this whole set of people. But when you go beyond that, you have a vast number of people who are taking medication, who are getting some degree of relief. But if you've ever been in touch with folks who are taking some of these powerful medications, they're not really living a full life in many instances. Some of them, it's doing enough to get them you know, away from a position of harming themselves or harming others. But, you know, they're in such an altered state that you can't define it as a sort of quality of life. And so from a therapeutic and a medical perspective, what psychedelics are doing, and this is just to touch on what Dr. Bowen mentioned, is, you know, they're rewiring the neural pathways, right? So we go from a situation where trauma that we've experienced in our life, whether that's could be of any nature, it could be parental relationships, it could be sexual abuse, it could be all kinds of things. But what we tend to do is, you know, we sort of reroute our pathways away from the trauma. And as we get older and older, that sort of tipping point, that defense mechanism that kicks in is further and further away from the trauma. And so we're not actually able to utilize most of our mental, we're not able to utilize a lot of our mental capacity by virtue of the fact that any comment, conversation, issue that even starts to remotely get into the fray of where that trauma resides, we start to sort of, you know, we get a little bit more sullen, like, where are they going with this conversation? And then we start to get more annoyed, and then we start to decide, I'm going to excuse myself. I'm going to get angry because they don't know what they're talking about, or I'm going to get depressed because it sounds like a judgment call. And what this allows us to do is reinterpret the trauma. So it's not the same solution as somebody trying to explain to you what you went through and tell you it wasn't so bad, or blah, you know, whatever the treatment protocol is. And I'm not trying to presume I know, you know, any better than a psychiatrist or psychologist by any stretch of the imagination. But what it allows us to do is to reinterpret that trauma. And by doing that, we get access to more of our mind. We're not so reactive to when we're talking about something that would previously trigger, to where now we're now shutting down, we're now calling away, or we're going into some sort of like altered depressed state or agitated state, because we can now better process the trauma. And it's so important to disassociate the recreational component, where people are using psychedelics to just have a sort of out of this world experience, just like some people use THC to have an out of this world experience. And the truth is, these are natural compounds. So while psychedelics is very powerful, and we want to teach people how to use it as opposed to exposing them without that understanding, these are life choices that people should have, with some kind of guidance, the ability to make for themselves, because they're natural. But in terms of a therapeutic approach and how it can help people, you know, why I'm so motivated and passionate about what we do is, you know, especially the Caribbean, we have this terrible, dirty little secret. Anybody who has some sort of mental health issue, we kind of sweep them under the rug. You know, they end up in the country with some distant relative, and you know, hey, what happened to you? They're in England studying, they're doing great. You know, because for whatever reason, we've conditioned ourselves to where, you know, we as a family are less than if we have to share that someone in our family is having a challenge in a mental health scenario. And what I really, truly hope, not just for the benefit of helping more people to realize their fuller potential by accessing more of their mind through the use of psychedelics, I really hope that part of our mission serves to help us in the Caribbean reframe that problem. Because these are people, and these are folks, unfortunately, who make these tough decisions that some of us can sit and judge, right? Like, why would you do that? That's terrible to send off to da-da-da. And the person says, I had to make a choice. I have 3 other children. And I didn't know if I was going to affect their ability to socialize, to have opportunities, because their brother or their sister has this sort of challenge, right? I can't imagine, as a parent, I can't imagine 30 years down the road having to think about that every single day and question if I made the right decision for my family, even though it pains me. So part of this mission for me is also the ability to put this conversation on the table and to now have it fleshed out, have us as a Caribbean people be more mature and engaged around these topics so we can address them. And here's the other thing. Every single medical practitioner who works in a psychiatric ward or helps people with mental health conditions, could you imagine the absolute mental sacrifice that they take on? They're working with one hand behind the back because nobody really wants to acknowledge what they do. Nobody really understands what they do. And in some way, shape, or form, we choose to sort of diminish what they do. And if we can somehow recognize the sort of incredible role they've played to keep us together and kick on from here, you know, we have this opportunity to raise our collective emotional intelligence, if you will, but also be more mindful and bring more people back into the productive part of our society. So I'm not here to sort of give you a crazy narrative, but those are some of the things that we look at that I think are so incredibly important outside of, you know, did you take your psychedelics today? And you come to Jamaica for that express purpose and so on and so forth.
So it's more about, you know, shifting the local culture or the regional culture around how we think about mental health and how we treat mental health. Ingrid, so could it be a situation where Turkey is to what you call it? You know, people will fly overseas to get enhancements. Just put it that way. What you for some reason it's slipping me what you call it now. So like plastic surgery. So Turkey is to plastic surgery as Caribbean is to weed. Is that something that we could make happen? Because people have been flying out all the time to go to Turkey to get cheap plastic surgery. So can people fly out to Jamaica to get cheap psychedelics weed treatment? I don't know.
Absolutely. I'm sure once there's a clear benefit that psychedelics show for them. I mean, because I read prior to this as well, there are a bunch of retreats already happening across Jamaica. People, you know, hundreds of people are coming here for controlled experiences with psychedelics. And so, you know, as Douglas said, that we can't just, you know, glorify a particular product without balancing the narrative in terms of the good and the not so good. And that is fact, it is not for everyone. And it's the same thing it is for cannabis. Now, yes, Jamaica has a global brand, you know, Jamaica Weed, right? And that's fantastic for us to have that. But I think there are two massive ways for us to really capitalize on that resonates in a broad scale, and that is through the importation of people coming in to experience, to have that Jamaican cannabis experience. It's been happening since the 70s or 60s, before I was born, right? And And so now it's a matter of how do we do it in a way that is even more amplified and even more educational and inspiration, and also, of course, medical tourism, because people take cannabis for different reasons, for medical reasons, for recreational reasons. And I think so we can import people to come and have that Jamaican cannabis experience through tourism and different levels of tourism. But I think also we should export the Jamaican cannabis experience through products and through events. And products, because we have to get into that export space and get into that global market and take what is that is uniquely Jamaican here. You know, weed grown in the West is different from weed grown in the South. Because there's different weather patterns and different earth nutrients, and weed grown in red dirt is different from weed grown in other kind of dirt. And again, it's just Jamaica. And I think
or in hydroponics or on the grow lights versus yes,
or outdoor as well. And so, and then the range of from THC to the CBD as well. And so those products, I think, because they're Jamaican, because we have that brand, I mean, I'm glad that we're really kind of pushing to get into the export market, but that's something that must happen, and we have to take our place on the global stage where that is concerned. And also through experiences, taking that Jamaican cannabis experience and exporting it. I look at one particular brand, Buds and Brushes, which is done by Mel Streets. Now, she is an edibles creator herself, but she started these, puff and paint experiences prior to the pandemic. With the pandemic hitting, she went digital, and it just exploded. And so she's taking both the Jamaican culture in terms of the cannabis experience, but also the music and cannabis Jamaican experience, which I think is just fucking brilliant. And so we need more of that. And I know she's not the only event that's doing that, but there are a whole range of other events as well. So that's how I see it. How do we maximize that Jamaican cannabis experience by importing people to have that experience locally, but also exporting our products and that Jamaican experience as well. Fantastic amount of money to be made from that.
Yeah.
Get a slice of that at some point.
Yeah, my biggest concern in all of this is how you said it, Ingrid. It's our culture. It's a big, huge part of our culture.
Yeah,
Jamaica weed. It's a lot of people think all weed come from Jamaica. People actually do think that. So, but it's about how do we maintain an equitable share in these markets, because weed becoming legal elsewhere saw a lot of us being pushed out of the market as well. So it's about maintaining an equitable share in the market, since for a long time we were vilified for this, and now that it is becoming legal
or decriminalized, etc.
We need to be a part of it. But before
we have to understand the business of cannabis. I mean, for us it was you could have go around the corner and go to the ice mint lady and get your $100 bag of weed or whatever.
Yeah.
You call your friend, and then all of a sudden a man tooting at the gate, and you have a big bag of weed. You don't know where it's from, what kind,
what it is, what it was.
Like, it's weed. Let's roll, right? Pull out the whites. Let's roll. Let's have a party, right? But in the small window that I was selling CBD oil, I learned a lot. It was just an experiment for me, because I use CBD and as well as use THC.
Yeah, so do I.
To manage different moods and attitudes. But what I discovered is that even just selling something that I consider to be very, innocuous as CBD, 99% of my clients at the time were women, were professional women, were executive women, were entrepreneur women, just managing stress and of course monthly lady pains. And there was because I had put out this blog about how I went from just saying no to yes about cannabis, and I had put it out on the blog, and it kind of like blew up, and I put up some images of me, smoking weed, and people were like, "What the?" Right? But I did it. I did it because I was like, "Listen, guys, we
need to change,
remove the stigma, and remove the thing."
Yeah.
A lot of people. There are a lot, even in the Jamaican market. There is a lot of people who simply do not know much about cannabis and its benefits to them mentally and physically. Yeah. And I had to do a lot of teaching to these women and to others around the true benefits and how to start and that kind of thing. So there's just in a local market alone, we may think that, oh, every Jamaican smoke weed. They don't.
They don't, yeah. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people, there are a lot of underserved groups in Jamaica, especially women, that are underserved and untapped because they're not being spoken to in a particular way, and they need to
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The educational part is really, really crucial, and it has to come from people who are not just trying to sell you shit, but trying to help you to understand your path and understand, is this really a benefit to me and how? And
that's what Douglas was saying with the psychedelics. That was his thing, that, you know, making sure that we're having the conversation and that we're educating people about what these things are.
And the other thing is, I mean, so I have experience in CBD as well, Ingrid, you know, and educating and how it works and so forth. And here's why, you know, one of the underlying reasons why we did the partnership with the Marley estate, you know, outside of the fact that, you know, from a branding perspective, it's a massive opportunity. You know, one of the key components, one of the biggest values that I think it brings is not to silo wellness as an enterprise, it's to the mushroom industry. Because what we saw with CBD is that we had to educate people about, you know, on this podcast alone, right? You had people talk about cannabis, weed, and marijuana, right? So for a person who had shut off this entire segment because it's wrong and it's naughty and if they listen to the first part, they still think we're talking about three different things, right? So we had to go through that. And then we reached a place where, you know, then we have to talk about THC and CBD. So then somehow CBD got this whole idea that that's the good part of cannabis and THC is the bad part of cannabis. That's right. And it's explaining like nonsense, right? And yada, yada, yada. So why we value this opportunity so highly for the industry is because, number one, I just, you know, I explained by telling you the three different types of mushrooms, but they're all mushrooms, right? So now we can focus on psychedelic, which has the most transformative potential for people to realize their own personal capacity, right? But how do we get there? We get there first by educating them about functional mushrooms that have no psychedelic impact. So for the person who's saying like, I'm interested in hearing, well, this has a little psychedelic, they shut down because their whole life they've been like, listen, nobody's telling me about my mind not being within my control and yada, yada, yada. What we have here is an opportunity to educate them through a brand they recognize.
Yes, a major brand.
Wow, Marley, mushrooms, what's that, right? And we get to say to them, this is how this works. This is lion's mane with ginkgo biloba. This is the flavor. It's going to help you with focus and energy and so forth. And then they get sensitized, they get exposed, and they learn. And in the process, they now start to think, so tell me about the rest of the mushrooms. Like, how does that really work? Because I've had a positive health experience from using this. And now all of a sudden, it's a very different conversation. You know, and we've seen this in all sorts of different examples in life, that it's a very different thing to have a prejudicial perspective than one that's actually anchored in knowledge. And so that's what we have to do. And, you know, we talk about technology and we can't get away from technology. Technology is interwoven into every single thing we do, right? You know, Dr. Bowen's a medical doctor, but he could just as well be just a tech entrepreneur. You know, his app does not warrant a medical degree per se. Yeah. He's been able to take that knowledge and leverage it into a space that his expertise is relevant and then put it out there with technology. So for us, you know, we want to use these tools to be able to better tell the story, share the information, and educate folks. And it's not just consumers. You know, cannabis and CBD have had a tough time in Jamaica because the people that actually administer it, they don't understand it. They're the ones who are still in many instances anchored around, listen, I don't want to hear about this thing because this thing's just going to get everybody high. And we're going to have a bunch of zombies walking through the streets of Jamaica. And I went to school in London or whatever, and everybody thought I was from some drug family. And I remember that, and And that's all real. But it doesn't allow us to perpetuate that because the actual scientific and medical evidence of how CBD works and how it helps the endocannabinoid system and helps us to self-regulate and have much more improved lives is real. So
I
truly believe that that's what our Marley collaboration of us in the psychedelic space is on a global level to increase the appetite, the interest of people to learn about psychedelics. And that's where the real healing resides in this whole mushroom framework, is in that side of things.
Yeah, because the Marleys were already involved in the weed business. And I remember when that came out, it was also a big deal because here is, you know, Marleys are quintessential Jamaican branding. Again, just like how you have weed and Jamaica, you have Marley and Jamaica, right? So people were like, okay, yeah, I get that. You know, of course they're going to go into weed. It's the Marleys, and everybody knows, you know, Marley, that image. When you think of Bob Marley, think of that image with him with a big spliff, right? So it's natural. So going into psychedelics may not be, you know, such a big jump, but people are like, oh, this is interesting. This is very, I think, forward thinking, you know, of them to then take this route into another alternative kind of remedy. But I want to switch over now to Dr. Bowen, because Dr. Bowen is the president of MDLink, and it is one of the first I know. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first one that I know. Yeah,
telemedicine platform in Jamaica. And I remember using it because I was trying to exercise and had a little slip up and hurt myself, injured my leg, and I couldn't get up to go to the doctors, and I used MDLink, and I don't remember the name of the doctor I talked to, but she was awesome. And I don't particularly like doctor's office, so that was great for me, and it was cheaper. So you know, it was easy to use. I literally went in, set up my appointment, got my appointment, I chose which mode, whether it was by phone or by video,
WhatsApp,
on WhatsApp, etc. I chose WhatsApp. She saw what she saw. She told me what to do. In my email, I got my sick notes. I got my thing what I need to get, and done, dusted, and gone about my business. So, Dr. Bowen, talk to us about MDLink, how it came about, and what the reception has been like.
Sure. So MDLink, telemedicine platform, more or less allows patients to connect with doctors in real time, get treated online right there, and get your prescription sent to the pharmacy, lab request sent to the lab, sick notes if you need a sick note. We have evolved into more of a digital ecosystem in that you can now book house calls online, you can book house tests online, we'll come to you and do the test. You can book a lab test directly online and then just go to the lab and get it done. We launched in 2017, and at the time I was actually in the British Virgin Islands. I'm from Trinidad, and I came to Jamaica at 18, did med school here, and ended up in the BVI. Spent some time in St. Lucia, so I'm very Caribbean, and I started doing events and promoting. Don't worry, I'm going to tie everything together soon. So I was doing events in Jamaica, and I left. I went to the BVI, was working. I then decided to go back into medicine, and I launched MDLink in Jamaica while in the BVI. I came back to Jamaica right in time, or I should say 2 weeks before the pandemic hit Jamaica. Not on purpose, but it did help. The company the telemedicine, because I was in Jamaica on the ground when the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden telemedicine moved from a convenience to a need. So at that point in 2018, we started having a lot of patients and doctors from each side coming on board 2019, 2020, and it has again propelled the use of the platform, the acceptance of the platform tremendously. In that now doctors, I didn't even have to convince doctors. They don't look at me like I'm crazy. You see a patient online.
They don't look at you like you're crazy anymore, because I can imagine that was a hurdle when you just started. Were doctors hesitant to sign up in the beginning?
Before that, guys, we want to say thanks to Ingrid. Ingrid has to jump off. Ingrid is very busy, so she's always having interviews all the place. So Ingrid has to jump off. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Good to meet you, Douglas. I'm sure we'll do face-to-face and do some business.
Likewise.
Dr. MD-Link, keep doing what you're doing. I'm keeping my eye on you, definitely. And yes, you are a tech entrepreneur, sir.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you, Ingrid. All right, so Dr. Bowen, I think Monique was asking you what was the reception from doctors like at first?
Yes.
Right. So initially, it was a bit of a patient online. I don't know, is that real? Is that a real thing? Is that legal? Can we actually do that? So I had to actually, and this is where the benefit of being a doctor came in. I had to ask my friends, can you help me out with this? Can you come on board? Can you get this off the ground? This was back in 2017. Telemedicine hadn't even a thing in America as yet. So they came on board and they helped me get it off the ground. I started seeing more and more patients, and then the pandemic hit and the doctors were asking me to come on board. So it switched around, and I would definitely say that more and more patients are using the platform. We're seeing a registration rate of about 100 patients per day. So that's huge.
Excellent.
Yeah, the usage is definitely growing. And you can use the platform for a lot of the simple things. You want to save money, you want to save time, you can treat your urine infection, your allergies, your rashes, your eye infection, you fill any prescriptions, your high blood pressure, your diabetes. It's especially great for mental health usage. So a lot of patients come on for anxiety, depression, and see some of our psychiatric psychologists as well. And we have gynecologists on there, pediatricians, almost every specialty. We even have surgeons, even though you can't do surgeons on the platform.
Okay. Awesome. And Dr. Bowen, are you planning on expanding MD-Link in the region?
Definitely. So we have entered a few other islands, including Trinidad and Barbados, and I have been approached by a lot more persons to expand even bigger. Right now, the headquarters is still in Jamaica, but we definitely plan to expand to the entire English-speaking Caribbean and then to the Spanish or the Latin side of.
Ooh. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Bowen. Douglas, I know you have to go. Tell us where we can access Marley One Products and when is the next Canex Jamaica conference?
So Marley One you can get via the website, marley1.com. And then we will have product in stores in Jamaica next week.
Next week, okay.
Ooh,
and when is the next? What are the price points like?
I think at retail in Jamaica, it's going to be roughly 3,200.
Okay.
It'll land at for 1 ounce bottle. So it's like a month's supply.
Yeah.
And then we have 5 different SKUs. I think you put them up before, but we have the 5 different SKUs for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're excited. I mean, it's you talked about Jamaica, and in terms of so often we talk about people coming to Jamaica as being the only metric of whether or not it's supporting the country, but the truth is, for me, like, this is such a powerful brand and such a powerful platform, and it's almost sort of disingenuous. It takes something away from it to just talk about it as a brand all the time. What Bob Marley stood for, what he lived, what he spoke of, was so germane to what we're talking about today. One, all of us being as one. The pandemic reduced us to this sort of false notion that this person is better than this person because they have a better car or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
To where everyone was faced like, what happens next? What I mean? No matter whether you had food or didn't have food in your pantry. It was like, what happens next? So there's the oneness of us as people, but we also have that sort of oneness of one with the earth, and understanding the tremendous healing power that the earth provides us. And so, the way I kind of look at it is from a micro perspective, we are hiring people in Jamaica. We are giving, villas, business. We're giving whatever, what I mean? So that there's that component to it. As we grow out our retreats, we'll do more of that. You have companies that are coming in that are using Jamaica as a base for clinical trials. In the terms of price landscape, is a lot more competitive to do it here.
Yeah.
But again, you're able to access the same high quality of intellectual capacity that you would otherwise, right? So that's a wonderful use of the country's resources as well.
Yeah.
But in our particular instance, outside of the cultivation we do locally, outside of the retreats we host, the jobs that we're creating here, I'm also proud of the fact that we get to take the legacy of a man who's been gone longer than he was alive, right? Let's not ever forget that. He's been gone longer than he was alive. And, he symbolizes so much of what Jamaica is and what it represents and how it has, continuously through the Usain Bolts and all these other instances, hit way above its weight class in terms of
punch above its weight,
for sure.
And we get to put that on the world map. We've created the world's first globally recognized mushroom brand.
Yeah,
it seems like a mouthful. It seems kind of interesting, but that's a really powerful.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But in creating that, it automatically ties back to Jamaica. Every market that we go into to talk now about functional mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms and how the Marley One brand, which is
Jamaica is a part of the conversation.
Jamaica is a natural part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get into this thought that, how is Jamaica benefited? And Ingrid said something earlier that I don't think we take as seriously as we need to. When opportunity presents itself, we have to be ready for it. And if we're not ready, then we have to get prepared. And I think too often we've taken individually and collectively a very small mindset of survival. And so we haven't prepared ourselves for when that opportunity comes. And when it shows up, we sort of, some of us are reactive shell of like, don't take advantage of me. When really and truly, opportunity doesn't wait for anybody. We have to step into it. We have to lean into it. We have to say, I'm good at this, but we need this, and this to make it work. And where do I find these people? And how do I collaborate with them? And how do I make that work? And that's where I think it's this whole idea that the cannabis ship has left Jamaica. I don't subscribe.
I don't subscribe to that either. No.
But I do think that the way of doing it in the past is not going to serve.
It's not for now or in the future.
Yeah.
But even Dr. Bowen said it. No persons are coming to him. Even persons in the cannabis industry are coming to him to say, "Hey, you have this platform, which is a first in the region." And in certain parts of South America, it's a first. So we're innovating in other spaces. So there's a tech innovation with platforms like MDLink, and there's innovations in alternative medicine as with psychedelics and with weed. And that's how all these things, and marijuana, and all these things come together to put Jamaica on the map. Again, you can't have a conversation about psychedelics now without talking about Marley One. And of course, that's naturally tied back to Jamaica. Similarly, you can't have a conversation about cannabis without talking about Jamaica. And the funny thing is, both things tie back to Bob Marley. Both of those things tie back to Bob Marley, right? And now we have a platform like MDLink that is ready and available and out there and saying that we'll participate in this because we see the benefit of it.
And we can extend the access to so many other persons because they can connect it via technology. Mr. Gordon, us here at Digital Jamaica just want to throw, with the launch, make sure you keep us in mind. Dr. Bowen.
You mentioned, we do have a Canex event, the Psychedelic Summit.
Sure.
In a couple of weeks, July 15 and 16.
Right. And that's in Montego?
Yes, in Montego Bay.
Okay.
I tend to do most of my events in Montego Bay because Jamaica seems to feel as though Montego Bay is country. Yes. And I'm trying to finally change that narrative. Montego Bay is a great place to be, but it's an opportunity for people to learn. And that's first and foremost what this all is about, is how do we learn so that we can understand, so then we can decide what actions we wish to take to participate or just to be passengers along the train. Yeah.
Sure. Dr. Bowen, thank you so much, Douglas. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Bowen, one more question before we let you both go. Somebody was asking, and maybe Douglas, you can help with the question as well. What are the benefits? Is there an autism link? Is there psychedelics and weed? Is there some kind of research out there that talks about the benefit of that to autism? Because I have a brother who is autistic. And, the person who asks, wanted to find out as well. Is there some kind of link between that and the treatment of certain types of autism? Or is there anything like that out there right now?
There are a couple of studies that link autism and psychedelics in terms of psychedelic use for autism. I don't have the takeaways from it, you know, readily in my head, but I do know that they exist. So I can try to find that, maybe channel it to you, and then you can.
Sure. Dr. Bowen?
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah. What I would say is that those studies are relatively new, and they focus more on the LSD and the MDMA side of the psychedelics.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, it has to do with rewiring the brain pathways.
Yes.
Okay.
So the studies are new. They're still working through it, and I'm sure more information will come out as soon as it's available. Thank you so much, Douglas, Dr. Boyd. We really appreciate you guys being on our platform. Yeah, all the best with Marley One, and of course, MDLink is on my phone. And I think I may try Marley One Products too, because I try cannabis now because that helps me sleep. So I'm hoping psychedelics will probably have the same effect, and of course, I want to experience the trippy.
That's why I'm saying Mr. Gordon needs to, you know, remember Digital Jamaica with the entire launch.
With love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
So much.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.